What's going on, guys? It is James without Sae'Von. I'm here today with someone that has been in my life for a long time. If you went to college with us, you knew us as a little dazzling duo behind the Bar South bar. If you knew us, UGA Heroes, that is actually where we met. This is a guy that has continuously swung the bat, taken chances, bet on himself, and fallen on his face a whole hell of a lot more than I have. So, with that, I want to welcome to the podcast AJ Briley. And for those of you that don't know, his most recent venture is PowrLine, and that's a big portion of what we're going to be speaking about today. AJ, what's going on, man?
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, appreciate you coming on. It's been a long time coming. If y'all had listened to he was on another episode. If you heard it, you heard it, and you know what it's about. If you don't, you weren't here. But let's dig into PowrLine. Okay. So for those, can you kind of walk us through what PowrLine is and how it came about and why you give a damn about it outside of having a monetary interest?
Yeah. So PowrLine is a sales automation software for roofing companies. We primarily automate sales follow-up for them. And a sales follow-up is really important in any sales job or role. And it sucks, and everyone pretty much hates sales follow-up, but it's kind of especially important in roofing because it is a high ticket item that usually has a slightly longer sales cycle, especially if it's retail versus an insurance job, like insurance not covering. It's a big purchase decision. So maintaining really consistent follow-up with homeowners, specifically commercial as well, but specifically with homeowners, is really key to increasing sales. And it's something that most salespeople in the roofing industry just don't do. There's as soon as they don't immediately get a sale, they're just on to the next lead. And it's very, very tempting to do that because the sales follow-up is so rough, especially if you're a people person, like most salespeople are, where they just want to talk to people and make money. That's what they want to do. Sales follow-up, when you do sales follow-up right, you're most likely going to be sitting in front of a computer screen, looking at a CRM, going through a database, figuring out who you need to follow up with, going back and figuring out the context of that interaction, and make sure that you're not saying something dumb when you follow up with them. And then going through that list and reaching out to them. It's a very much of a repetitive grunt work type of activity that nobody who sells roofs wants to do. And so we automate that process in a way that not only takes that work off their plate, but actually makes it fit really easily into their system, integrates with all their software, runs really smoothly, contextually. And from the homeowner's perspective, it just feels like the individual salesperson is following up with them like they should. And the end result is they make more sales. So that's the gist of what we do.
About how much more effective does PowrLine make them?
Well, we built PowrLine around my co-founder's roofing business in Athens.
Mm-hmm.
Before we implemented version 1 of PowrLine, his close rate on quotes that he sent out for roofs was 28%. I believe it was like 28, 29% of the quotes that he sent out to homeowners ended up in signed contracts and completed jobs, revenue, and sold. Well, so after the entire process of implementing PowrLine multiple times, iterating on it, his close rate now on quotes is above 60%. So he's hovering at about like 63, 64%. And there are other things. I mean, I'm sure he's gotten better at sales. He's changed other things about his process, but PowrLine was the biggest change because what happens is he still made all the sales he would normally make when he first gives the quote and maybe gives them a call. But then he would continue to get sales 6, 7, 8 months later that otherwise he wouldn't have gotten, that would have completely forgotten about him, possibly even gone with a different company. But because PowrLine was consistently following up, he got those sales as well. And that is what has brought his close rate so high. And we're seeing that with other companies as well. But we only started letting other companies onto the platform last August. So it was kind of like the back end of last season. So we're still collecting data and building case studies around those guys as the season heats up again this year.
Okay. Yeah. First of all, when did When did you start building apps, and why PowrLine, and why this specific problem? Is it because clientele? This is something that a lot of people are struggling with, your previous clientele, or was it just, hey, you saw an opportunity and you went for it?
There's a lot in that question. I think a lot of what you just asked would get answered if I just went back and sort of outlined the process of getting to where I am now.
Okay.
Let me start all the way back in college, because I think we're going to have a few people that listen to this that may, like you said, known you and I as the guys behind the bar South. So I was in my senior year, UGA. I started a agency that did photo, video, and marketing for small businesses. So I I left Bar South and I started doing some marketing for a few different local businesses in Athens, and built up a clientele around doing photo, video. I transitioned out of photo, video at one point and transitioned to pretty much focusing on marketing with websites and SEO. And my first big client that I had for the websites and the SEO marketing, search engine marketing, was John Delorier, who is now my co-founder. So I did this for his roofing business to get him more leads in Athens, built his website out, got him ranking in Google, started collecting those leads in. But within the first year or so of us working together on that, his leads started going up, but then he was having trouble actually working all those leads. He was getting overwhelmed by the leads that were coming in. Leads were slipping through the cracks. And so he came to me and was like, hey, like I'm struggling to work all these leads and close these leads. It's awesome that I'm getting more leads because of what you're doing, but do you have any ideas on how this could be better handled or systematized, something like that? Mm-hmm. And so I just started getting to work. I started playing around with different automation tools, Zapier, played around with MailChimp, Twilio, just started hacking things together and seeing what I could come up with. And that resulted in version 1 of PowrLine, which is just a mishmash of no code tools. And that first version, which was very, very rough, that had almost an immediate effect on his close rate. And it jumped him up by about 10%. So he jumped from like 28, 29% up to high 30s on his close rate within 6 months of us implementing that. And so that was version 1. I kept doing marketing for him. We kept playing around with it, improving the system. And his close rate, as we'd make little improvements, kept going up and going up and going up. And so it was about a year and a half ago. It was, I guess, beginning of 2021. It was tail end of 2020. I made the decision that this has a lot of value. I knew PowrLine had a lot of value in his business. So I made the decision, I'm going to go all in on this. I'm going to build it into something that other roofing companies can use too. And so John and I went in on it together. And we just started building this out. I picked up development. I started researching how I could develop web applications. I played around briefly with seeing if I could outsource it, but I didn't feel like that was going to have the result that I wanted. I really wanted to have control over the product. So I just started putting in the work to research how I could build web applications. And I already had some background with HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So that kind of helped as well. And then I found a platform called Bubble, which is primarily a no-code platform. And so between that and my existing some actual code knowledge, I was able to actually pull together PowrLine. It took about 8 months to get the initial version of it together and working and launchable. And then we launched the company January 2021, and then launched the product officially in August of 2021. And we picked up 6-7 customers last fall, all of which are still with us. And then we've just in the past month picked up another 7-8 customers that have come on board. They're all roofing companies that are now using the platform. So we're super excited about that.
How many hours do you think it took you to build that on the back end? Like inside bubble, if you had to guess.
Thousands,
Hmm.
maybe close to 2 or 3, somewhere between 2 and 3,000, I'd guess, is what I have in on it at this point.
Yeah. With that, do you find that there's massive shifts that are going to come for PowrLine on the design side on the back end in the coming months?
As far as how it looks,
Oh, I mean, or how it operates or how it functions. I mean, as you know, you're talking about you brought in a bunch more clients more recently, right? Is there big shifts that that you're going to be rolling out, or are we kind of just iterating on where we're at and continuing to build, or like what's going on? What's going on the back end, on the UI, everything there?
yeah, at this stage we feel really good about where everything, like, we feel like we have the basic structure down. We have the product in a place where it's highly valuable. People enjoy using it. Things are intuitive enough that people get how to use it. There's always room for improvement. I think the bigger risk, or a big risk for any software company, is the sort of the never ending development process where you never quite get it done. And I think you have to kind of be mindful of, okay, yes, this could be a good feature or a good change to make, but is it necessary to make? Like, is this actually bringing more value to our customers, or is this just diluting our product and distracting from the core value? It's really important early on too. I think it's a huge trap to fall into. Just, okay, well, let's add this feature and this feature and this feature, thinking that if you add enough features, then it makes the product valuable. The end of the day, there's certainly some features that I've added that were of that kind. They were just unnecessary. Mm-hmm. They weren't necessary for launching the product or growing it. But at the end of the day, it's the PowrLine's ability to automate follow-up is why people are buying it, or why people are signing up and sticking with us. And so every other feature that's not essential to automating follow-up is what has ended up being a distraction. I could have saved myself some time by anticipating and thinking through a little bit more about, does this actually contribute to improving and facilitating the sales follow-up piece? So
yeah, where's PowrLine going over the next 6 months?
We have a lot on the table right now. We're expecting to continue to grow by 1 or 2 customers every week moving forward into the summer, just based on the market heating up and the relationships we built and our marketing efforts up to this point. So we're expecting continued growth, steady growth there, all else staying the same. We have a couple opportunities on the table that we're really excited about, potentially sponsoring some big influencers in the roofing space, some co-marketing opportunities with other really highly established software companies in the roofing space that are complementary to what we do. And so we have a lot of opportunities on the table right now that would just allow us to very quickly scale up our user base. So we're really excited about those. The biggest bottleneck right now is we have to be ready to handle the volume that these opportunities would bring. So we just can't push go on opportunity that's going to bring 100, 200 customers, which we do have multiple opportunities like that on the table right now from a marketing standpoint, but we can't press go on that until we can actually onboard 100, 200 people simultaneously. And we're nowhere close to that right now. So we still have some work to do on the onboarding process and need to do some hiring to actually cover our customer success, customer support, so that as we take on an opportunity like that, and we do have 100 people all onboarding at the same time, there's enough people to man the support lines, man the chats, and potentially get on Zoom calls with people and walk them through how to set up their account. Because the last thing we want to do is tarnish the reputation of one of these influencers and ourselves by having them endorse or promote us out to 100,000 roofing companies, and then all those roofing companies have a terrible experience because they're not getting the support they need to actually get onboarded.
No, that definitely makes sense. What's the feedback been from other complementary software companies and maybe even your competitors in the roofing space?
Yeah, it's super interesting. It's definitely been a process of It's, I always, every success I've had so far when it comes to business has just been a process of basically having a staring contest with the universe. You kind of just got to stick around and not give up, which sounds really super cliche, but so much is just not giving up. You get a lot of legitimacy from that. So a lot of these companies and influencers and people, I mean, they were never rude or pushed us away necessarily, but we started building. So John, this is really the role in the business that he's focused on, is building out these partnerships and relationships. And so he's been doing that for the past 2 years, anticipating that these will be valuable in the long run. And so he's been really, really investing in these relationships and building these relationships with these industry leaders. But even so, even a year ago, these people were not interested in working with us or promoting us. It's really us sticking around and to develop. Can you hear me?
No, repeat that last sentence that you said. I think you just accidentally hit something, but I can hear you now.
You can hear me now?
Yeah. It just like cut out for a second.
Okay. There's something going on with my headphones too. Okay, so oh, that's really weird. Anyway, it was really just sticking around and them seeing, okay, these guys are serious. These are not just a couple of guys trying to make a play for some money. These are got some guys that actually really care about this market. They really care about this industry, and they're trying to elevate this industry and bring something of value that is going to help roofing companies grow their businesses and have better, more profitable businesses, as well as improving the customer experience for the roofing companies' customers as well by improving communication. And so, but it took us just sticking around and continuing to build those relationships over time for that to sort of develop and flourish. So I think that answers your question.
So you had to stare the universe back in the face. Yeah, I'm curious though, how inviting was the roofing space to this new tech outside of just we want to make sure these guys aren't just trying to make a quick buck? Like, were they inviting? You've been to the conference, what, 2 years in a row now?
Yeah, we went to the International Roofing Convention last 2 years, and we plan to have a booth at the next conference. We didn't have a booth this last two years. We just were networking. I mean, I'd say it's pretty normal. Most industries are going to be suspicious of new entrants, new vendors into the space, and especially other vendors. They're going to be curious, both to see whether or not another vendor is a threat to them and their product, and or is someone that would be valuable for them to align themselves with. And so there's definitely curiosity, but I think the roofing industry specifically is an industry that is a little bit more resistant to change than some other industries. And so no one was unfriendly, but I mean, we definitely had to work to establish ourselves and prove ourselves that we were serious and that we're building something serious and that what we are building has value to the industry.
Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. So I kind of want to pivot here just partially. I kind of want to talk about your story, your entrepreneurial journey, your in the trenches, your mountaintops, et cetera, et cetera. Is obviously PowrLine is not the first thing that you've been involved in, right? There's many other things that you've been involved in, many other things that you ran down. What's been the biggest mental hurdle in building PowrLine and running it at where you're at right now?
Biggest mental hurdle. I don't know if it's a hurdle, but when I'm working on something that I'm passionate about, I get obsessed with it. And I think that's key. It's a big strength for me, but it's a weakness as well, because I can sort of drive myself to an edge with stress and with getting super worked up and hyper focused and not allow myself some time to decompress and to to maintain my health. And so that's something that I've had to really learn over time is in the past I've been tempted to adopt a mindset of this is going to be super successful in 6 months. And so it's okay for me to not work out, not meditate, not do anything for my mental health, and work 12 to 16 hours a day, which I love doing. It's not, I don't have to force myself to do that. So because I love when I'm very passionate about something, I will work 12, 16 hours a day on it and love every second of it. And so, but allow myself to do that for 6 months straight to the detriment of everything else. And what usually happens is, because building a business is very difficult and it's a long game, in 99% of cases, unless you're essentially winning the lottery, it's not, whatever I'm working on is not successful in 6 months, but in 6 months I've succeeded in tearing myself down physically and mentally to a place where I'm much, much less effective at actually continuing to build the business and burnout, it's a common term for it. So that's a super important thing that I've had to learn is certain things are non-negotiable, like fitness. I still miss workouts now and again, but I've really tried to focus, and thank you for your help on that. Since you've been planning my workouts, that's definitely been helpful, holding me accountable on that. But I've had to commit to the fact that workouts are non-negotiable. I can't, no matter what's going on in the business, I cannot not go do a workout just because I feel more like building the business right now, or I feel like my time is better spent in the business because I skipped that workout, and that's where I would have released some of that stress that I was building up. Mm-hmm. And it allows me to come back and be that much more effective and better at decision making when I come back to the business. So that's super big lesson learned. That's really important. I don't know if it's a hurdle, but that's definitely something that I've learned to watch out for.
What's the support system look like for you outside of your business, right? Like John's not sleeping in the same house as you, right? What's your support look like from family, from friends, from significant others on your entrepreneurial journey? I think that's something that people don't talk about a lot.
I can just describe it. Describe it. I do definitely keep a small circle intentionally. You're in that circle. John's in that circle. I have a good relationship with my roommates and some of their friends. We just had a game night last night, and I broke away and played some board games with them, which was fun. I spend time with my family. I'm grateful that I do live relatively close to my parents, so I'm usually over there, if not every week, maybe every other week. I'll go have dinner with them or something like that. And of course, my girlfriend, Maddie, who's very supportive, even sometimes when she doesn't feel like being supportive. So I'm very grateful for that. And I think that's important, because going back to that, I've definitely fallen in many times to the trap of thinking I'm going to sacrifice everything for the next 6 months because I think that's all it's going to take to build X thing and make it successful. And it just never quite pans out that way. And so I think a really important mindset to have in business is the marathon, not the sprint. It's like, am I operating right now in a way that I could continue operating for the next 5 to 10 years in order to build this into something that's successful? Because I think that some people do become successful in business very quickly. That does happen, but it's almost always a luck thing. And I'm not trying to build on luck. I'll accept luck when it comes along, but I'm trying to build legitimate, very legitimate businesses where I can sort of guarantee myself success. And that just takes a lot of time. And that takes the willingness to commit to something for years and years and years, realizing that, that's you're truly building something versus just trying to get rich quick. That just does not pan out in most cases, unless you get lucky.
No, definitely makes sense. How many other things have you failed at publicly? How many other ventures? How many other endeavors?
I had to count them. I was just talking about this last night. It was either 8 or 9. There's 8 or, and some of them, it's not necessarily that they failed. It's like my agency, Blackfire Systems, is still quote unquote successful. I mean, it generates revenue, it generates income. Mm-hmm. For me, it never turned into anything really big. It just was always a small marketing consulting firm. So, but then there's lots of stuff. I mean, we can talk about Blackfire Social. I was automating like 300, 400 cell phones to try to build people's Instagram accounts up, and having Instagram like ban half my accounts every other day, and then realizing this is not sustainable. And yeah, I mean, that's one thing. There's what you and I worked on. We went down the path trying to sell data, targeted data, or it's basically B2B demographic data. Yeah, for targeting ads.
I still have your bow ties.
Yeah, I mean, there's that too. I wouldn't consider that necessarily a failure. I feel like when I quit that, I felt like it could be successful. I just didn't want to be the bow tie guy the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And I still am the bow tie guy to a lot of people, but yeah, I mean, I think that was the first time I really realized it was actually with that business, because when I started that business, I was in the mindset of, I see people wearing bow ties. There's obviously a market for it. And so I'm going to build a bow tie business, and I'm going to make it successful. And in like 12 months, it's going to be making $10,000 a month, and I'll be balling out. It'll be amazing. And that's not how it turned out. I spent like 2-3 years building it. And I think grand total sold close to 30,000 bow ties, which is cool. It's $30,000 generated selling bow ties. Super random. But I realized to build it into an actual successful business that could support my livelihood and my income, like full-time income, I was going to have to commit to it for the next 3 to 5 years. And I was like, this is not what I want to spend the next 3 to 5 years of my life on. And so I think it was after that, I never again tried to do something with a short-term mindset like that. Everything I worked on after that was like, I am planning on working on this for the next 5 to 10 years. Now I didn't with everything, because things oftentimes before I even got that deep, it was very obvious that something was not going to pan out for one reason or another, usually because of some element that was completely outside of my control, like Instagram deciding they were going to really crack down on fake accounts like halfway through my business. And then with the data stuff, we had a partner that was supplying the data who turned out just didn't have high quality data and didn't have a good delivery method to even make it actionable. So, and so it's just like, yeah, I think that was the second big lesson for me was, if it can seem like a shortcut to build with a partner, build on top of somebody else's ecosystem. And there's certainly businesses to be built that way, but you have to be super careful, because if they make a decision, when you build your business around some other ecosystem, if that ecosystem doesn't care about you and they change their policy on something, or they've decided to do their business this certain way that negates your business you've built around them, then you're done and you don't have any real control over that. And so that I think that was the big lesson to me, is like, not only do you have to go into something with a long-term mindset, but when you are building something, you should go for something, depending on what size business you want to build. But if you're trying to build a big business, you should build your own ecosystem as much as you possibly can. Build independent of other tools. And I know I'm being super vague here, but it's like, if you build your entire business around Instagram, for example, then it's just like one decision by Instagram, shut down your account, or change their policy and XYZ thing, and your business is gone. And that's super dangerous. Versus with PowrLine, like I have that tech, and we do still have some partners, like we're on the bubble infrastructure, but there's millions of other softwares that are on their infrastructure as well. Maybe not millions, but close to it. There's a lot of other software companies on there. So I'm not really too worried about them just disappearing tomorrow. But yeah, it was a big lesson. It's like you should seek to be to build something as independent from other people's ecosystems as possible if you want it to have longevity.
Now, when you're saying that, you're talking about digital, right?
Yeah, I mean digital, but I mean there's lots of other stuff too. I mean, I think, there's going to be people that don't like this at all or completely disagree with it, but there's a lot of people that build businesses around network marketing, some of these network marketing companies, and there are some very legitimate ones that bring real value, and you can build a really profitable business around, selling supplements or selling makeup or selling, this or that. But you are still reliant on that ecosystem. So if that company, something goes wrong with their product line, they get sued. It turns out they were putting sawdust in their pills instead of actual, X, whatever it was supposed to be in there. Like, then your business is done. Like you've now, like you can try to leverage that network into something else, but people that are following you are not going to trust you the same way. So you're really having to, you're really putting a lot of faith in that entity and organization. So, but I mean, I think you do the same thing when you work for a company, So I would say that's like you're more independent that way than if you just work directly to that company as an employee. But I think the path that I've taken in life in general is, let me be as independent as possible. Let me have as much space between me and the decisions that other people are making, so that it's unlikely that just someone could just wake up one day, make a decision, and then my business is gone or my business has been completely undermined. If something's going to go wrong in my business, I'd like it to be a mistake I made versus a mistake somebody else made. If that makes sense.
Yeah. No, kind of take full ownership and responsibility for the rise or the fall.
Yeah. Just about how you approach building.
Yeah.
Building around someone else's ecosystem or platform versus your own.
Have you seen your worldview shift in the time that you've been on this entrepreneurial journey?
What do you mean by that?
Your worldview, how you see the way people are interacting, social dynamics, the way that you view yourself in the macro, in Atlanta and tech and in life in general. I mean, there's been many times and maybe some asymmetry where we've gone deep on Jordan Peterson and gone deep on other stuff. I'm sure that you, and nobody's going to know what I'm talking about here, but I'm sure that you know that you and I have not done that in a very long time. We've really been focused on business. Our conversations have not been around, 12 rules for life and maps of meaning, right? But how has your worldview, have you seen a shift in your worldview in how you view what existence is, where we're going, what we're doing, how we're moving?
It's a really big general question, but I think it's definitely difficult for me to answer because you're kind of talking about through this entrepreneurial journey. To me, it's just my life. So I don't really.
You've been on this path your whole life.
There was never a point that I wasn't planning to go down this path, if that makes sense. So this was always, I feel like, the path that I was on at some point or another. I will say, I guess at one point, I definitely thought I was going to go down like military / political, and quickly found that was not the path for me. But yeah, I mean, this is so I guess like, yeah, my worldview has developed over time, but just as anyone's worldview would develop throughout their life. But I mean, a big thing for me that I think I've shifted on is probably over the past 8 to 10 years has been where I see myself identify politically. I definitely identified more conservative 8-10 years ago. I would identify myself Republican, conservative, and now I would definitely identify strongly as middle of the road independent, and very separate from both of these both sides of the political spectrum, because I think that it's just I see so much just utter stupidity on both sides. It's so frustrating, and it has nothing to do with logic or there's no reason and reason, logic, or even real or even empathy. None of these higher ideals are factoring into the way most people are making decisions politically, or about who they support or who they criticize. It's all simply this is my team, and anyone that speaks out against my team is wrong. And I'm going to find X way to tear down the other side. And it's just, and because everyday people are approaching it that way, the politicians and public figures are then playing into that, getting people riled up and tricking them one way or another. And it's just as bad on both sides. I mean, you can point to one side or the other, left or right, and kind of say, okay, this is more damaging than this, but both sides are being terrible. And they're just hurting society and hurting America in different ways in the long run. So, yeah, I don't know. I definitely step back from that more and more, and developed a much more independent worldview, where it's I believe that it's very important for me to think through on my stance on each individual thing versus just okay, well, this is what this is what Republicans believe. This is what conservatives believe, or this is what liberals believe, or this is what people that have empathy believe. Because, a lot of times it's presented that way. It's oh, you don't believe that these people should get free this or that. You just don't have empathy. And it's no, there's a little bit more to this than just whether or not someone has empathy. It's you can't, the world is just a little bit more complex than that. So yeah, I don't know. That's a big way my worldview has shifted. It's I think if you took every single issue that our society struggles with, I personally would probably, it's a 50-50 on which side of the argument I would fall on. Because it's just, life is complicated. You cannot simplify it down into just teams. It doesn't work.
So it's not binary, you said? It's not A-B, it's not 1-0.
Yeah, it's not team A or team B, team blue or team red. And it's everything should be approached as its own separate problem to be solved. And when it comes to any of these political debates or things, and I think it's important because of that, because people don't understand the complexity of these things, then they get really tied to one side of the argument, and then they're unable to have honest conversations. They're not willing to just talk it through, and they think that anyone that would dare present an opposing side of the argument is automatically spreading misinformation or automatically spreading, hurting society, killing people, because they're saying the wrong thing. When in reality, the topic being discussed is so complicated and so beyond what anyone is qualified to make a real definitive statement on, that the only way to approach it is for people to speak openly and freely about all different angles and perspectives. That's the only way you could get anywhere close to the truth on it. It's true of most of these arguments. So I don't know. That's something very much.
So you would say that you're a proponent of absolute free speech?
Yes. That is something I'm very definitively in favor of. And it's funny how that's swapped back and forth. You go back 20 years ago, and that was a very left side of the political spectrum belief to hold that everyone should have free speech. But now apparently, if you think everyone should have, there should be free speech and everyone should be able to say what they want, now you might be a Nazi. It's like, that's what people think. That's what a lot of people in America think now. It's like, if you dare to speak freely and believe that other people should be able to speak freely on any topic and express their opinion on it without losing their rights or their access to their bank accounts or something like that, then you're somehow evil and you're hurting society. It's really wild to me. But I think the biggest part with that is people legitimately think that their side of the argument is right, which is just arrogance and ignorance, really. But they legitimately think that their side of the argument is right, and there's no way it could ever be wrong. And so from their perspective, anyone that speaks out on the other side of the argument is hurting society by spreading misinformation, spreading falsities. And what they're not thinking the 2 steps down the line of what happens if the majority of society, what happens if the majority of society decides that something that they believe is now wrong. And then society's coming for them, wanting to shut down them. Now, I think what it really comes down to is most people are just sheep and they go with the winds. So they're not worried about that because their plan always is just, well, if I'm now saying something that the majority doesn't agree with, then I will just flop sides. No, I'm never going to be on the other side from the majority because I will always be following the majority. So I don't know. There's that too, but I think anyone that considers himself to be an independent thinker that's not just following the herd, there's no way you can't support free speech because it's a critical aspect of that. So,
yeah, that's a fair point. I would agree. Would you, kind of coming back to the entrepreneur direction that we were going, what do you think what's the best advice you give someone that's sitting on the sideline that has a lot of ideas that hasn't taken action, or maybe has dipped their toe in but haven't drowned and doesn't have any success, but wants to be an entrepreneur? Because there's a lot of people that want to be an entrepreneur, that want to have businesses, that don't want to work for the man. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I've come a little softer on this, but I still kind of believe like if you haven't done it, you probably shouldn't do it. I don't know. It's like you can't really speak in absolutes, but it's such a critical aspect of success when it comes to starting. And there's also a huge difference between starting a small business, especially if you're starting like a franchise, for example, something that's where it's like very laid out for you, and you're following an existing structure, versus starting something completely from scratch, or something that there's no real proof that the market actually wants it, which is the path I went down with PowrLine. I think the path, if you're trying to build like a software startup and you want product market, you're trying to find product market fit, and you got to build this product, and you got to make sure everything gets funded. I mean, it's unbelievably hard to the point where it doesn't ever make logical sense for you to keep working on it. Like most of the time, it's like if you were actually being logical, you would walk away from this. You have to be so unreasonably dedicated to building this thing and making this thing work, that you really don't have any other option. You have to feel like you don't have another option, because if you had another option, you would take it. So it's like that level of unreasonable commitment. It kind of just comes, it's not really something that I feel can be developed. I think that that's something that you fall into, or that finds you. And if it's not already there, and you don't have this unbelievable drive to because you don't feel like it's literally like it's this or death. Like that's how I feel about PowrLine. Like I'm pushing this through, or I will die trying. And that's not hyperbole. Like that's how serious I am about it. But if you're not at that level with it, then you probably shouldn't try to force it. Because there's so many, and you can have a lower level of commitment for sure and go down a different path, like a franchise path or something like that. Like these things have a little bit more of a balance to them. Part of the process has already been worked through. Somebody else figured out whether or not the market wanted this, figured out they did, put together all the systems and processes for you. And even if you don't go like a franchise route, like just starting a normal small business can be very lucrative and can provide a lot of freedom and a great life. And you can you can contribute a lot to your community. And so that's really important. Like we need small business owners. It is still a very different path. So I think that's important when it comes to like talking about entrepreneurship. It's like, that's a very different path than like the path that I've gone down with PowrLine. It's a different type of business entirely. And the level of commitment is just different. But yeah, it's if I don't see very many people now there's like caveats to all of this. Like there's so many exceptions. Like there are people that, you know, they because of family, like they had people to support, they had no choice. They couldn't risk it all for 3 years trying to build something. And I have empathy for that. Like sometimes you have to be practical, especially when you're taking care of other people. And I guess it depends on like, you know, are you just comfortable in that? Or like, do you basically hate your life? Because if you hate your life, yeah, then like that was the thing for me, is like anything else but this, I would absolutely hate my life. And so it's like, it's not even a choice. Like I have to make this work. So that's like my gut answer when someone's like, oh, you know, like what should I do? Should I go out on my own? I'm like, if you haven't done it, you're not going to, like, and you shouldn't try, because you're going to waste time and resources. And I don't want to discourage people, but like, you really have to have such a massive just combination of fear and hatred towards any other path but the path to build your business if you're going to make it successful, because it's just like, it takes so much out of you. Yeah.
Would you say that you even have to have ego to do that?
I mean, I think there's an ego element, but ego doesn't sustain you. Like ego can be like an instigator. I feel like it can be a motivator, but then it doesn't sustain you when things get really tough. Because when the reality of your situation, and like everyone in your industry is basically doesn't want to give you the time of day, and you're still pushing forward, like that's not going to help you build a big ego. And a lot of times your ego will hurt you. But I mean, I admit your point, like starting out at the beginning, that can be an ego thing. But
okay, so those that want to try it, that are 26, 27, 28, if you haven't already done it, don't do it. AJ Briley on the mic.
That's kind of, I don't want to be definitive. I don't want to be absolute.
If you had to be taken out of context, though, if that was a statement, if it was only one statement that you could make to those people that look at that in college were like, why are the two of you working? But now when we see them at the bar, they're like, hey, like, it's really cool what you're doing. Like, yeah, is it cool?
I don't think it on a meme. Put it on a meme. AJ Briley. If you haven't done it already, don't do it. It's just like, you and I we can't help ourselves. It's like there was never a choice. Like I think that's what it comes down to, is like people are like, should I do it? Should I not? You like there's really like there's no choice there. Like for you and I, like we never decided, oh, like today's the day that we start working on businesses. It's like we couldn't help ourselves. We always have been just trying to build businesses.
Let's do this.
Yeah, to the detriment of everything else. And so it's like if you find yourself in a position where you're even making that decision,
probably in the wrong place.
I don't know. You probably don't need to go down that path.
Well, I'm going to clip it with a very clickbait headline, and we're going to get you canceled on YouTube for that. But I would agree. I would absolutely agree.
I don't want to discourage people. I do. It's just like, but I'm also not going to fluff you up. It's like, it's completely different if you're like 16, 17, 18, like you're still super young. I mean, I think like I was playing around with different business ideas at that age, but I mean, there's different levels to it. I can see how, when you're really young, but if you're 25, 26 and you haven't at least gone out and actually done at least one business venture, you're not cut out. I can almost guarantee you're not cut out for it. It's just like, you would have already been doing it. You would have already, like, you wouldn't be able to help yourself if that was the gear that you had.
Yeah. Or there would be tendencies that would be present. It wouldn't just be like, hey, I'm over here working for somebody else, have no interest in doing anything else, have no interest in trying. Like, that's what you're saying? Anyone that's like that far along on that direction, like, there's no way you're going to come over here and play.
No,
Is that who you're talking about?
Yeah, you'll get eaten alive, and not by the other people. You're eaten alive by yourself, because it's like the risk tolerance. I think that's one of the biggest elements is the risk tolerance. And that's what people don't really factor in. They like the idea of starting their own business and going on their own, but it's the risk on a day-to-day level is so high. Like, it's literally like you're walking along this really steep ridge on top of the mountain. And like, if you make one wrong step, you're going down the side of the mountain. That's what it feels like every single day. And you have to be geared to just love that. And like, that's the way your life has to be. And if you're used to walking along this nice manicured path through a career, even if you're annoyed at your boss, and it's just like, it's going to be very hard for you to be comfortable walking along that mountain ridge if you've walked along this manicured path your whole life. And there's nothing wrong. That's the other thing, is like, there's nothing wrong with the manicured path. And so like, if you're unhappy with your job, the solution is probably not to start a business. The solution is probably find a different job. Like, you're probably geared to work a job. If you've never done anything entrepreneurial and you're like 26, 27, it's like, probably your solution is find a different job, like start a new career. If you hate that, because it's maybe, it's like I think that's the biggest constant of entrepreneurialism, like dudes like building businesses, is that risk, that constant risk and danger hanging over your head.
Yeah, it's like a day in, day out shit.
Day in, day out, every single day. It's like, and you have to be wired for that. And so like, just because you hate your job and you think that if you start a business, you can build up financial freedom, which is an admirable goal, doesn't mean that you're cut out for that risk, or that you're going to enjoy it, or that it's going to make your life better. But then again, like, this is all absolutes. Like, there's maybe someone that has spent their whole life just like cookie cutter, normal job, and then they decide at 30, 40 years old that like they're going to start a business now, and realize this was the missing piece their whole life. I mean, I'm sure that happens.
Gary would say that you could do that at 70, but sounds like AJ says no.
70, whatever. Like, the age is regardless. I think now what I do see, I see a lot of, with other, this was not the path I took, but I see people that started businesses, failed early, like in their teens, early 20s, had to get practical, got a corporate job, worked their way up through a corporate job, and then came back out and started businesses. That's a good strategy. Like, that's because it's practical, and you might pick up a lot of stuff during those corporate years that you can then pull into building your own business. So like, I see that's a lot. But like, if you haven't tried anything by now, like if you didn't do like a lemonade stand, you didn't flip some
lawn
toys,
care,
or like
didn't do anything.
Lawn care, like you didn't do any of that. It's like, you never thought to do that. You never wanted to do that. You might not be wired for it. It's not a bad thing. That's the key here, is like, it's not a bad thing. It's like, just know yourself.
Yeah.
Like, know yourself. You can get, you want financial freedom. You don't have to starting a business is one of the worst ways, probably. Like, you're going to be poor for a really long time. Like, you want financial freedom, go get a job, live below your means, reinvest it, like diversify your portfolio. You're going to be extremely wealthy in like 10 years, but get some rental properties, like play it smart with all that. Like, you're basically guaranteed a lot of wealth within 10, 12 years. It's like, there's such a better way to do it while staying on that manicured path. If all you want is financial freedom and you hate your boss, so
Find another boss. Don't start a business.
Yeah. Find another boss. Like, be smart. Don't buy the giant house and the nice car. Like, cause that's where you need that money to invest into assets, start building up your assets. Like, there's just, there's nothing about like what I'm doing or what you're doing that is, there's a romanticism about it. I give you that, but like, it's day in and day out. It's like, it absolutely sucks. And you have to love that it sucks or you won't last.
Yeah. It kicks you in the dick every day.
So, it's really critical. And like, you gotta build up that skill of like literally being kicked in the dick every day. And then not immediately being like, oh, fuck, I shouldn't be doing this. Like, let me find my way back, and just realizing like, oh no, like this is my life. I get kicked in the dick by my business every single day. And it doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong. And it may not stop forever. It's like,
yeah. That's where I currently am for sure.
Yeah,
for sure. It's day in, day out. Exhausted. Gotta keep moving, dude. You chose this, we chose this. We didn't decide to go do something else. There's nothing wrong with either path, really. You just got to figure out what the hell you want. I mean, you are the author of your life, right? You can't just let life do you. Got to do life. So
that's right.
And I don't know, man. We none of us make it out alive, so might as well do something that I enjoy.
Yeah, that's super key right there.
Yeah. So, well, cool. Well, I know that we'll probably run this back another time, but is there anything that you want to leave with anybody with on PowrLine, on you, on where they can find you, what they should look out for? Are you looking for any hires? Like how can we help you?
Yeah, the biggest thing right now is we are looking to hire fairly soon. We're not quite ready yet, but the first hire that we need to make is a customer success manager / just general support. We're interested in paying really well, plus stock equity options as well in the company. So we're definitely looking for the right person and willing to compensate them well to work inside of a startup environment to help us to scale. Cause we're about to go we have 14 customers right now, and we have opportunities on the table that it's going to quickly jump us up like 100 companies at a time. And we really want to take advantage of those. But the big bottleneck is having that support in place and people trained up to actually help companies on board with our service and all that. So yeah, if you have any kind of experience with customer success, account management, customer support, especially in software, I would love to hear from you, and let's talk about how we can maybe look at bringing you on board. And definitely some major upside with the with an equity package and stuff like that for someone coming on this early. So
cool. Where can they find PowrLine? Where can they find you? Are you on Twitter? Is PowrLine on Twitter? What's going on? Are y'all on YouTube? What's happening?
Yeah, PowrLine is PowrLine.com, PowrLine.com. No E in PowrLine. You can find PowrLine at PowrLine app on pretty much any social platform, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Everything's at PowrLine app. Myself is at AJ Briley. I think it's at AJ Briley on Twitter as well. Might be _ AJ Briley, but if you just search AJ Briley, I will come up on Twitter. That's probably where I'm most active. And then I also have an Instagram, but it's really just friends and family on there. So Twitter is probably the best way to find and interact with me. And yeah, that's about sums it up.
Cool. Well, greatly appreciate you coming on. I know it was a little last minute. Thank you for making the time. Wish Sae'Von could be here. He needs to be here for the next conversation that we bring you back on for round number 3. You'll be the only guest to come on 3 times. So gold star for you, maybe 5. We'll see. Guys, y'all can find this anywhere. If you're listening on this, if you want to see the video side, that's going to be on YouTube. We drop episodes every Monday at 9 a.m. Also, snippets are all broken up and disseminated to Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Instagram. If y'all enjoyed this, leave a little review. If you didn't, that's okay too. We will see you next time, and thank y'all for listening. Appreciate you coming on again, AJ.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All
It was
right.
fun.
Peace.